Hi everybody, I'm Kari Simpson.
I'm Ron Gray, and with us today is Paul Dirks.
And you are watching Culture Guard. And today we are going to be talking about an important piece of legislation that's been winding its way with just little spurts of information coming out here and there. But it is Bill C-16. There we go.
Yeah.
Paul, we saw you, we watched you at the Senate hearing on C-16, and it was the first time, to my knowledge, that anyone had spoken clearly to what's wrong with this bill. All of the rest of the discussion seems to just have been, how do we put these two words, these two phrases into the legislation?
Before you even answer that, I have to tell you, we saw you at the Senate hearings, but I have to tell you, I received a number of emails. Kari, you have to talk to Paul Dirks. You have to talk to Paul Dirks. Paul Dirks, he's one of you guys. He actually does things in this nation. He stands up, he moves forward, he speaks articulately about issues, and he's researched. So I had to slide that in, Paul.
Thank you.
So tell us how your involvement came about with this. Of all the bills and pieces of legislation you had to pick, you jumped into a frying pan, and you knew it would be hot. You've even turned the heat up because you went on a bit of poster campaign to draw attention to this. So I say thank you on behalf of Canadians. But tell us what led you into this battle.
Yeah, so Kari, I felt like I was going to be fighting this battle at the local municipal level, and that at some point I was going to have to go to our school board and fight this when it came to my own children that are involved in the public school system. And then got word of Bill C-16 moving very quickly through the House, and realized that this battle that I had foreseen was going to be happening at a national level, and I needed to get involved with what I knew. I have just kind of a penchant for research on gender and sexuality, and so I already had a bit of a background in some of the peer-reviewed medical journal literature that would help me going forward, and I didn't know how much time I would have, and so just began to get involved how I could. Facebook, postering, and as it turned out, the amount of time, even though it has moved relatively quickly, has actually been longer than what I first expected coming into the campaign.
So, Paul, this bill has been presented as simply extending the rights and the protections to an identifiable group of people. So what's wrong with that?
Well, for starters, trans individuals should be protected, and none of the people that spoke at the Senate that I'm aware of were speaking against that. Trans individuals are worthy of respect, value, honor. But the problem is that when it comes to gender and sex, which has previously been protected under the law and under the Human Rights Code, that gender, as it is so ill-defined or really undefined, and ends up erasing sex-based protections in reality.
Wait, and daily being redefined.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. It's this fluid terminology that it's like Jell-O. You can't. Yeah. It's like trying to stick Jell-O to the wall.
It is, and it's also quite, it's so strange that people can't wrap their minds around how incoherent it is. The idea that gender is a spectrum where you've got women and men on either sides of the spectrum, and yet somehow we can't define either one of those sides. It's completely incoherent.
It's amazing how the world has survived this long, Paul. Like, I mean, Well, Ron and I were just saying at an earlier show that this isn't about making Canada great again. It's about making Canada sane again. Then we'll worry about greatness, because there is an element of lunacy to this nonsense. And that's why I admire your willingness to step into this, because having been a longtime activist and trying to deal with exposing the sex activist agenda within Canada, this is a really tough one, because you're always dealing with the bleeding hearts, because they throw out those stories, right? And like you say, everybody in Canada, trans, whoever, whatever you want to be that day, deserve to be protected. But we are getting into this identity politics now. Yeah. And that is concerning to me, because ironically, I think we are creating more division within Canada, more civil unrest, more animosity towards other groups, because certain groups are getting more privilege, more rights, more money. than others. And, instead of bringing together the people, I'm seeing a great divide forming.
Yeah, here's a little story just about that I got word of a protest that happened against our church because of my campaign against Bill C-16. And I had one of the leaders of Gay Pride New West come to me and actually tell me about what was going to be happening. And as we talked about Bill C-16, there was actually quite a bit of overlap in our views on it. There were some significant differences, but there was quite a bit of overlap as well. And we ended up agreeing on a number of things. And one of the things he told me about our conversation, which was very friendly, great guy, I have wonderful respect for him, was that he has a gay friend in the States who is Mexican and he's gay, and he ended up voting for Trump. And my gay friend says, how do you do that? But the point for him, as he was speaking this to me, was that we want to avoid ripping apart the nation. We need to be able to discuss these things, and that has not happened about Bill C-16. It has not happened about these these related policies and legislation. It's just been ignored by the media.
Yeah.
And where they have.
But that proves my point. Instead, now you have the citizens rising up because
yes, that's precisely.
Let's face it.
Absolutely.
This movement is now storming through the front door of people's homes. It's storming into the classrooms across this nation.
Yep.
It's taking over the classrooms. Little kindergartners are being indoctrinated with this lunacy. It's insanity what's going on. And people are going, where did this come from? Why is this happening? And do you have any ideas on how this movement has been able to gain so much momentum?
Well, I think that as Canadians, we tend to have this this desire for reaching out to whatever the next group is that's a victim and wanting to come alongside. And some of that, I mean, that's good.
Can I be the next victim, please?
Yeah. And Jordan Peterson spoke in his, I'm not sure if you saw his Senate testimony, but he talked very eloquently and persuasively about this this idea that was just, it's engulfed all of North American culture, which is this notion of victimhood.
Yes.
And whoever gets to be the biggest victim gets to speak the loudest.
And of course, Jordan Peterson
Peterson
is the University of Toronto professor that has been the firestorm of riots and, university goons, thug tactics. We have a couple of the videos on Culture Guard, but he is truly been a Canadian symbol for free speech and clarity of thought.
Yes.
They try to drown him out with noisemakers because he won't say je and jure. Okay. Look, I've got a list here from Facebook of 51 genders on Facebook now.
Only 51, Ron?
It's probably grown since I took this list. For me, Paul, it comes down to something like this. If we knew a teenage girl who was as slender as my arm, and she looked into a mirror and said, "Ooh, I'm so fat," we would know that poor child has a psychological problem. She needs counseling, comfort, care. She needs help.
Yeah.
If that same girl looks into the same mirror and says, "I'm a boy," our federal government says we must agree with her or we are a hater.
We need to affirm her. Affirm. Not her. We have to be careful of that. We have to first find out whether or not she identifies as a binary gender or whatever.
What pronoun she? Okay.
All right.
Madness.
So let's get to how you got to the Senate, because I find that as I say, I love it when Canadians take a stand and walk through the doors. And I watched your testimony. We both did. You did a fantastic job.
Yes, thank you.
On issues that I don't think people expand the thought process to about this. How is this going to affect everybody's daily lives?
One of the things that there's so many problems with Bill C-16, and Jordan Peterson touches on some of the free speech angles, and there really are multiple factors. The things that I focused on with my Senate testimony were privacy and protections. And especially when it comes to privacy, the idea of consent. I'm absolutely convinced that there has never been an attack on privacy in all of Canadian history, like Bill C-16, because it removes from women and little girls the right to say no to having a male body, a nude male body in their change room, in their locker room, in their camp cabin, as it may be in their women's shelter. It's a tremendous attack, and it overturns decades of jurisprudence on privacy law.
Well, and you documented actual cases of assault and confrontation in the places where this kind of language has already been implemented. So the record is clear.
So, Ron, one of the most frustrating things is the degree to which the opposite side, the mainstream media trans narrative has successfully hoodwinked people into thinking that the kinds of cases that that people like myself, or in some cases conservatives, though not all conservatives, there are liberals that would be very much in the same camp, are saying that these things are going to happen. They've been hoodwinked into saying these things haven't happened. And so, we've done a tremendous amount of research, hundreds of hours of research on crimes against women by males in public spaces. Yeah. And whether you are looking at extremely narrowly, only those examples where males have dressed as women or taken on a woman's gender identity or expression to perpetrate crime, again, you're looking at about 29 incidents in Canada, in the UK, and in the United States, or whether, and I think you should go broader than that, because there are all sorts of examples.
Voyeurism, for example.
All sorts of examples where, like here in Surrey, where they built a new, at the Grandview Aquatic Center, they built a new center, and now all of a sudden there's this very significant family change area. And this is, there's not a lot of Canadian places that would have that. It's going to be becoming more and more because of gender inclusion. And what do you know? Within a very short period of time, you've got a voyeuristic act by a male against, in this case, an elderly woman who says, calls it a pedophile's dream. These things are happening, and it's absolutely shameful that in the Senate you have had senators like Senator Dick and Senator Mitchell who's been cited as saying that these events have not happened. They have happened. It's easy to show, and we just need to put that argument to rest. And sadly now the goalposts get moved, right? Now, instead of these things haven't happened, well, they're infrequent.
Sorry, but if we have media and elected or appointed legislators saying that these things have not happened when the research shows that that's a lie.
Well, that's willful blindness, but that's part and parcel to this whole issue. You have to have that element in this. Stupidity, delusional thinking, because critical thinking certainly hasn't played a large part in this. But okay, that's part one of our interview with Paul Dirks on a very important issue that is affecting you. Whether you think, oh, well, it's just an amendment to the Human Rights Code and this and that. No, people, it's coming into your kids' classroom. Yeah. So join us for part two, and we're going to talk about what people can do. We're going to talk about how you were received at the Senate and what came post-Senate from your appearance there. Thank you for joining us. I'm Kari Simpson.
I'm Ron Gray, and this is Culture Guard.
See you soon.